Garbagia Island is a dystopian post-apocalypse concept of project that we created in the Lower East Side as part of the community of established artists and activists. We create this analogy between the Lower East Side history and the current situation of Puerto Rico.
The beautiful thing about Garbagia Island project that we're hosting at Loisaida is that we're getting to revitalize that art and activism merger that the early Puerto Rican community who started living here always saw as a pivotal part of their community making efforts.
As part of Garbagia Island summer program, we did a couple of workshops with a group of poets called La Sopa. They came to our workshop. We had an automatic writing workshop, and we incorporate a lot of the influence of Bimbo Rivas poetry. So we just did a strain of thought writing, automatic writing, so we can get the people involved into writing and into feeling free about writing whatever they want to write.
La guerra, the war, y un poeta de este tiempo, de este pueblo, Loisaida.
Community gardens are an essential component of a livable community. They are places of respite where people gather and organize and talk about issues that are going on in their neighborhood. It's a place where children can play in nature without having to leave the city. And it's a place for arts and culture where people get to express themselves through music and poetry.
People will say, the gang members started this garden, and then they'll say, oh no, it was the Puerto Rican people who lived in this neighborhood started this gardens, and then they'll say, well, the squatters started the garden, and then the people there now say, no, they were just all drinking and drug addicts, we started the garden. So it's really interesting when you get into the history of the garden. But then when you'll find out the gang members did this. And the people at Charles del Bajío, they built this part of the garden. And then the squatters built the stage. And then each time they brought it up to a new level. My favorite thing about community gardens is the word community is built into it. So no matter how anybody wants to distort that part of history, it's a community garden. And that word community means so much. When people took them over, they were abandoned spaces and they reclaimed them. The city was broke back then. So they didn't want these dangerous places for their kids, for drug addicts, for bad things to happen. So they got together as a community and pulled out all the materials, the wood, the lumber, the bricks from the building actually falling down, and they put it on the street. And the city worked with them and actually picked up some of the garbage. But most of the time, almost all the time, the people from 30 years ago, even 40 years ago, till exactly today, did all the work, spent all their time, all their money, working in the gardens. And in this process of learning, sustainability happened. And in sustainability, they actually started recycling in one of the gardens on 6th Street. That recycling wasn't even being done by the city. So the city has copied some of the programs that started at the gardens.
Trash worship started in La Plaza Garden, and Anuki became a trash god and protector of all insects on this earth. So we from then on, we evolved a mythology that spinned all around Anuki and his ways and the way we looked at trash from then on, with his holy guidance. It was the beginning, and it was the revelation of a major mystery, that the prophecy at that time, about 17 years ago, was that the whole world would be engulfed by waste and trash, and we needed to protect it and treat it right, otherwise we will all drown in the trash. So trash worship was a way of salvation from drowning in waste. The the first time that Garbagia came up is when we appropriated some riverfront property in the South Bronx. It was next to the railroad bridge. The plan was to turn this sliver of land by the river into a Garbagia land, meaning all like a fun park with rides and sculptures, all made from discards, from waste. The space went, but the idea of having a Disney-like fun park made of waste is still a good one.
There's a lot of synergies between the East Village and the South Bronx and the Puerto Rican communities that live in both places, where the importance of open space to engage with plants, to meet each other, to talk about what's going on in the neighborhood are a very vital component to maintain the cultural diversity and vitality of our neighborhoods. And in the South Bronx in particular, there's been a lack of such green space and open space, especially along the rivers, where now at this time the gentrification pressures are extremely high. There are plans to build high-rise luxury developments, and for decades there has not been one single inch of public green space. Whereas in other communities that handle garbage, power plants, diesel trucking facilities, there's at least some measure of amenity. You could look at Asphalt Green, for example, on the Upper East Side, where there's a marine transfer station being reopened. They also have a wonderful greenway along the river. They also have a pool, they have a green space, they have amenities to compensate to some degree the need to handle such a site in their neighborhood. The South Bronx has no such green spaces along the river, and so paddling up by water to the wonderful street festival was to show that people in the Bronx, in the South Bronx, we should also have the opportunity to have waterfront access, to be able to go on the water, just like they do in Brooklyn and parts of Manhattan.
The Giuliani administration, he actually went on TV. He was not shy at all and said, we're going to destroy every community garden. The gardeners, when they heard this news, they're gardeners. They weren't so good about protecting the garden or doing direct action, because sometimes you have to do direct action to get media attention or use legal means. But in all, whenever you do a big campaign like the one to save the gardens, which happened several years ago, you need a lot of media attention. And the gardeners weren't willing to understand that. They weren't understanding arrest. So other communities and groups came in to kind of help the gardens in that area. And this became a very successful campaign. And there was a garden called Esperanza Community Garden that was on 7th Street, and over 100 people got arrested in 2000, the year 2000, to save that garden. That got so much media attention around the world. And then Elliot Spitzer came in the next day with a legal decision with the courtroom and stuff that put a temporary restraining order to save the gardens. So how were the gardens saved? The little known history that this museum kind of represents is the people saved the gardens.
So the land is owned by the city. I've always made the argument that actually it's owned by the people, because we are the city. We pay taxes, and without the people in the city, there is no land. A lot of the original community gardeners throughout the city, especially on the Lower East Side, are my age. I mean, they're older, they're in their 60s, and they're aging out, essentially. What we need to do as a group, as organizers, as the New York City Community Garden Coalition, we need to bring youth into these gardens. We need to make them enjoy what happens in these gardens and show the value. We talked earlier about showing the city the value of community gardens. We need to show youth and other people who don't know about gardens what the real value is. And to keep that legacy going, we need youth in gardens. And so we work pretty hard at that. We have summer youth programs, and we try to do everything we can to make that happen, and to try to change. So that's yet another way that you affect change, and by bringing in, younger people who are going to try to push in different ways. And you know, my generation, we didn't have social media. We had payphones, and it always amazes me when you look back and you think, wow, we got a lot of people there without having cell phones or Facebook or Twitter or whatever. We got a lot of people at different places, you know, and we can still do that, but it's a very changed world, and you have to work with that, and the youth will help us learn how to do that much better. And that way, by learning from younger people, we'll learn to sustain our gardens, and the community gardens will continue to thrive. It's the only way it'll work.
We did a workshop with 6th Street Community Center. We did a Carmen Pavon workshop, taking the figure of Carmen Pavon and using it as an example of a community leader. So the kids had the inspiration of Carmen Pavon, and then they create their own community leader, and they all create some kind of consciousness about how you can help the community and how you can support people in your community and make it better somehow.
Garbagia Island is about that conviviality, that merger of differences towards something bigger, of reclaiming hidden histories, invisible people that are not invisible to the people in Loisaida and the longtime residents. No matter where you come from, people that still know who Carmen Pavon was, who Bimbo Rivas was, who Chino, who's still around and present and kicking and doing amazing stuff, was, so many others, you know. But for the larger narrative, it's not necessarily known. People just know this place as the East Village. And it's very important that those were the pirates that saw the potential in this area of this investment and created things from scratch and had the vision to do it. Loisaida, it's the appropriation of the Lower East Side by the Latino community, particularly the Puerto Rican pioneers that began during those times. Right, basically, Loisaida became a metaphor of how you see a place that others see as waste or as disinvestment, and people can build treasures off of that. And right now, the background of a lot of the community that is here, even though it's third generation Puerto Rican, is confronting a new wave of immigration caused by the fiscal crisis that Puerto Rico is going through right now. Well, they're coming to New York, but they're also coming away from this fiscal crisis context where there's lack of opportunity in Puerto Rico. And the people from Loisaida and from New York City in general are confronting this new wave of Puerto Ricans that maybe came for similar yet different reasons that their past generations came before that. And what we're trying to explore is how Loisaida, the metaphor, that actionable call from the early community builders of this area, can inspire this new generation going through many of the same things in their own island. You know, that vision of making something out of nothing, that do-it-yourself spirit, that being open to the world while at the same time getting your hands dirty, rooting yourself, thinking creatively, but at the same time being very rooted in the place and the environment where you are to see what possibilities there are in front of your face, you know, and looking for other angles in which to innovate and create value instead of what the standard value system usually is.
For us, as being not from New York forever or New Yorkers, or like we come from the island, so it's beautiful. It's not only the Lower East Side, it's been this place to us, and it's amazing because it has such an incredible story, but it could be anywhere, and that's that's the real meaning there. I think that we can do this anywhere, and you can feel empathetic and part of a place in a human way. It's New York here, but we might be, I don't know, in Europe or Asia or another place, and it feels the same way, because at the end it's human.
I've been thinking a lot about food waste and composting, and how a lot of people don't want to compost because of issues of it's like whatever. A lot of people don't want to compost. So I was thinking of other ways to deal with food waste. So I started going around the Long Island City neighborhood and collecting food waste, only, like mostly fruits and vegetables, almost exclusively fruits and vegetables, and I was collecting them in a 50-gallon drum that's usually used for oil, and then I blended them all together and cast them into sheets to make essentially fruit leather, and then took that material and cut it into a form of like ancient samurai armor, or at least inspired by like samurai armor.
Yo hago una máscara, yo no tengo idea de lo que va a ser, pero va a ser como ¿sabes? Es totalmente espontáneo, con una sensación que viene de aquí y creo la máscara. Le hago con un molde con plasticina, le tiro plaster encima, hago un negativo y después hago el papel maché adentro. Lo saco y le empiezo a poner más capas para darle como que una forma y una textura y lo pinto y después se convierte en otra cosa. Como que empieza siendo algo y termina siendo otra cosa. Y el personaje terminó siendo, como era tan malvado y es como una máscara, pues terminó siendo un developer que quiere quitar la basura del neighborhood y construir un high-rise building.
I decided to go to the laundromats around here and I collected several bottles. I had no idea what I was going to do yet, but I thought the color of the detergent bottles created a certain interest in me. So after I collected those containers, I came here and I start dissecting them. See, they kind of study the flexibility and ideas, what could come out of it. So as I start dissecting them, I just used to and put them like that, and I look in the mirror and I said, oh, this is so cute. It looks a sort of a face of an animal, a mask.